Hello, my name is Mabel, and this is the story of my romance with Clifford. I'm 77 years old, and if you had met me not long ago, you might have thought I had already lived everything there was to live. The truth is, I believed that too. Ever since my husband passed away nearly a decade ago, my days have grown quieter than ever. The ticking of the kitchen clock seemed louder, and the sound of my own footsteps echoed as if the house itself were constantly reminding me of the absence. For many years, I filled my days with predictable routines. Coffee at 7, a light walk. At 8, evening soap operas at 6. My children, now grown, have families of their own, and though they visit me lovingly, there's something only time spent alone teaches us to notice. There is a kind of loneliness even the love of others can't erase. It's the loneliness of no longer belonging to yourself, but there was something that never fully left me, an old desire, tucked away like a forgotten photograph between the pages of a book, to learn how to play the guitar. When I was a little girl, I was mesmerized by the musicians who appeared on TV shows. I remember hearing the melody of a bolero and dreaming of my fingers gliding over strings, pulling out sounds that could speak for me. But life in youth moves fast. Then came marriage, children, work, bills, and the guitar, well, it ended up on that familiar list of maybe one day. For the longest time, I thought that day would never come. It's too late now, I used to tell myself, as if there were some kind of expiration date on. Dreaming. But a thought began to visit me often, like a gentle knock on the door, waiting to be heard. What if there's still time? What if, instead of just remembering who I was, I could discover something new about who I still am? One of those Sundays when the sun seems determined to brighten even the saddest corners of the soul, I sat on the porch with a notebook in my lap and wrote, "I want to learn to play the guitar." It was the first time in years I wrote something just for me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt that kind of good nervousness you get when something new is about to begin. I know it might seem small to some, but to me, it was a rebirth. At 77, I chose to do something for myself. I chose not to accept that dreams have an expiration date. And I say this not only to share, but to remind you, if you're listening to me now, while we're still alive, there will always be a melody waiting to be played. The Monday following that sunny Sunday, I woke up early, had my coffee and cheese bread, and decided that would be the day I'd finally start looking for guitar lessons. I admit, my hands were trembling more as I opened the computer than when I'd written in the notebook. Guitar lessons for seniors, I typed. Nothing. So I erased the word seniors and left just guitar lessons for adults. And there it was, a simple ad, no gimmicks, no colorful letters, private guitar lessons for adults. Learn at your own pace. I clicked, read and reread the text a few times. The phone number was there, staring back at me like both an invitation and a challenge. I picked up my cell phone, took a deep breath, and dialed. The voice on the other end was deep and calm. Hello? I almost hung up. Hi, good afternoon. I saw your ad. I'd like to know more about the guitar lessons. There was silence for a moment, and then he said, "Of course, I'd be glad to. I work with adults, in the comfort of their own homes. Would you like to schedule a trial session?" I agreed, before courage had the chance to leave me. We set it up for Friday afternoon. The following days, I couldn't think of anything else. What if he thought I was too old? What if my hands couldn't keep up with my heart? I looked at myself in the mirror and practiced excuses. Sorry, I don't think I'm cut out for this. Or maybe I waited too long. But none of those lines could convince me to quit. If you've ever felt afraid to start again, or thought it was too late to chase a dream, then this story is for you. Before we go on, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps bring this message of hope to more mature hearts who just need a gentle nudge to start over too. On Friday, I got ready as if I were going on an important date. I picked out a light blue blouse I hadn't worn in years, and brushed my hair with more care than usual. When the doorbell rang, my heart raced like I was 20 again. I walked to the door and, as I opened it, there he was, a man with neatly cut, white hair, a face weathered by time, steady eyes, and a subtle smile. He held a guitar the way someone holds a piece of their soul. "Good afternoon. You must be Miss Mabel," he said. I smiled, still a little breathless. "Yes, you can just call me Mabel." He stepped inside, and in that moment something shifted. I can't quite explain it. It was as if the air had a different weight to it, as if time itself had chosen, just for a moment, to slow down. Clifford had barely stepped through the door, and already it felt like he had left a trace in the room. A warm, subtle, woody scent that reminded me of my grandmother's old pine wardrobe, where she used to keep folded linen sheets and letters from another era. It smelled of life lived, of time well spent. He moved slowly, like someone who respects the space around him, yet his presence didn't ask permission. It simply settled in. As he gently pulled the guitar from its case, like it was something sacred, my eyes went straight to his hands. Large, knotted hands, but strong. They looked carved by time, etched with stories I didn't yet know, and there was a steadiness in them that didn't intimidate. Instead, it made me feel safe. When he brushed his fingers across the strings just to test the sound, a chill ran down my spine, as if each note carried a piece of his soul. "Do you like boleros?" he asked, adjusting the tuning pegs with the ease of someone having a quiet conversation with the instrument. "I love them. There's something in boleros that speaks to us, even when we don't understand all the words," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. He chuckled softly, and that laugh sounded more like music than any chord. "Yeah, that's what music does. It reaches places we didn't even know were there." As he explained the parts of the guitar, tuners, neck, frets, my attention drifted between the words and the way he spoke them. There was rhythm in his voice, as if each sentence was measured, considered, respectful. He wasn't in a hurry, and that captivated me. After so many years of dry silences or rushed conversations, hearing someone speak slowly was like stepping into a warm bath after a cold day. I caught myself staring, not out of distraction, but out of curiosity. There was a calmness about him that disarmed me, and in that moment, I realized something I hadn't expected to feel. Sitting in the living room of my own house, across from a stranger with a guitar, I was interested, not just in the lesson, in him. But it wasn't a youthful kind of interest, the kind that comes rushing in. This was something else, a quiet desire to hear more, to know the little details hidden behind that scent of wood, and those hands that seemed to understand the precise weight of every gesture. When he looked at me and said, with a gentle smile, "It's okay to take it slow, Mabel. Music, like life, is learned in the rhythm of the heart." I felt something warm unfold inside my chest, and that's when I understood. Maybe I wasn't just learning to play guitar. Maybe, without realizing it, I was about to tune a part of myself that had been silent for far too long. The lessons became part of my routine, like morning coffee or afternoon embroidery. But unlike everything else in my life, they didn't come with predictability. Each meeting with Clifford brought a kind of lightness that surprised me, and at the same time, a sweet tension that grew quietly, like a melody that starts soft but gains depth, note by note. He always arrived on time, guitar strapped on his back, bringing that same comforting scent of wood with him. Sometimes he brought a pastry, other times a new song for us to listen to together. And me, I would be waiting with the house freshly tidied, my hair pinned back with more care than usual, and my heart beating differently. He never mentioned it, but his eyes lingered a moment longer on mine, like they were reading something even I didn't know how to put into words. "Shall we start with the G chord today?" he'd say, handing me the guitar with such delicacy, as if offering more than just an instrument. And when my hands hesitated, he would come closer with that same patient air and gently guide my fingers into place, like this. "Feel the pressure at your fingertips, but no tension. Let the sound come out, Mabel. It wants to live." And I'd smile, trying to hide how deeply that simple touch affected me. Slowly, I realized it wasn't just my posture with the guitar he was adjusting. It was as if, without even knowing, he was fine-tuning parts of me that had been out of tune for a long time. A compliment here, a comfortable silence there. Sometimes he stayed quiet while I struggled with a chord, but his presence spoke louder than words ever could. And in those silences, I found myself watching him, admiring the way his eyes followed the music, attentive, kind. One afternoon, after I messed up the same chord sequence 3 times, I let the guitar fall onto my lap. With a frustrated sigh, "I guess my brain just isn't as sharp as it used to be," I mumbled, half laughing, half defeated. He leaned in slightly, with a smile warmer than the sunlight pouring through the window. "Maybe not, but your heart is, and that's what music really needs." In that moment, I knew something was being composed between us. Without sheet music, without rush, without promises. It was a song we didn't yet know how to sing, but whose chords were already echoing in the space between our eyes. Each meeting felt like a rehearsal for something greater, something more intimate, something that belonged to just us. And I, at 77, was beginning to understand that certain feelings, like music, don't need to be explained. They only need to be felt, with an open heart. It was late afternoon, and the light spilled through the window as if trying to paint the room in gold. The guitar rested on my lap, and I now knew the chords with a bit more confidence, even if my hands were still slow to obey. Clifford was sitting closer than usual, maybe because of that day's lesson, or maybe because something invisible between us no longer allowed so much space. "Today, let's try something different," he said, in that calm voice that always made my guard drop. "Music has a lot to do with the body, Mabel, with the way we breathe, with how we feel each note before we even play it." "With the body?" I repeated, slightly surprised, glancing at him with a curious smile. "Yes," he replied, leaning in a little. "Technique matters, of course, but it's the body that turns music into feeling. And for that, you need to be comfortable within yourself." He asked me to close my eyes. "Feel the guitar, the weight of it resting on your legs. Notice the wood against your skin. Now breathe, slowly." I did as he said, and for a moment, the world went completely still. No noise, just my heart, racing. I felt his soft steps around me, then the warmth of his presence at my back. "May I?" he asked quietly, like someone asking permission to play an intimate melody. I nodded, eyes still closed. His hands touched my shoulders first. There was no rush, no intrusion, just a profound care. He guided my posture gently, adjusting how I held the guitar, shifting my arm with a tenderness that felt like it spoke another language entirely. His hand slid down my arm until it reached mine. "Here, looser. The sound needs room to come out." And in that instant, something in me opened. It was more, a touch. It was listening. It was presence. It was someone seeing me, fully, even with all the marks time had left. I opened my eyes slowly, and he was still there, so close I could feel his breath on my neck. He smiled, but didn't say a word, and neither did I, because there was something sacred in that silence, like the exact moment before a song begins. I felt a warm wave move through my chest, a deep, familiar recognition I had long forgotten, the reminder that I could still be touched. That desire still lived in me, not the hurried kind of youth, but a mature longing, quiet and full of meaning. I discovered that even after all these years, the body still holds its own wants, and with the right touch, they awaken, not with noise, but like someone opening a window and letting sunlight in. No one ever told me that love could arrive this way, in silence, softly, almost without asking permission, that it could be born between one note and the next, in the space that exists between a touch and a glance. When I was young, I thought love was fire, urgency, promise. Now, I understand it can also be a breeze, constant, gentle, and still powerful enough to change us from the inside. With Clifford, love didn't come with declarations or grand gestures. It showed up in the little things, in the way he set the guitar aside just to listen to me talk about the cake I tried to bake, in the way he looked at me when I nailed a difficult chord, with quiet pride, as if every small victory of mine somehow belonged to him too. Once, while tuning the guitar, he said casually, "You have a beautiful way of dedicating yourself to things. It's rare these days." I didn't know what to say. I just smiled and looked back at the strings, trying to hide the sweet wave that phrase had stirred inside me. Loving after 70 feels different. We've already lost, already cried, already watched time pass without asking our permission. And that's why, when love does show up, we recognize it, not by the spark in someone's eyes, but by the peace it brings. It's no longer about forever. It's about presence, about being there, fully, in the now. Conversations with Clifford had no urgency. Sometimes we talked for hours. Other times we just sat in silence, listening to the sound of the strings and the passing of time. He taught me that loving also means knowing the right moment for each note, that there's no need to rush when the feeling is real. One late afternoon, while we were putting away the sheet music, he looked at me with tenderness and said, "You know, Mabel, I don't just teach guitar. I'm learning too. And with you, I've learned to listen beyond the sound." In that moment, I realized it wasn't just me who was living something new. There was something in both of us that recognized and embraced the other. And that, more than anything, was what touched me deeply. Love in our later years has a rhythm of its own. It doesn't impose. It doesn't demand. It offers itself, played chord like that vibrates and lingers, even after the sound fades. It's a kind of love that doesn't seek to possess, only to be present. And how beautiful it is to love like that, with freedom, with lightness, with truth. At 77, I thought I had already learned everything I needed to know about life, about loss, new beginnings, about time that passes and never returns. But I was wrong, because it was at this very age, when the days felt repetitive and the nights longer than they should be, that I learned something new. I learned that it's still possible to live something for the very first time. And more than that, I learned to listen to myself. Before Clifford, my days had the sound of silence, a heavy silence, one that didn't just come from the absence of voices, but from the absence of meaning. I filled the hours with routine and memories, but nothing truly pulsed. Until, somewhere between strings and chords, he appeared, and without promising a thing, he gave me back the rhythm I didn't even know I had lost. It wasn't just about the guitar. Sure, I learned to play a few songs, to recognize tones, to challenge myself with what my fingers hesitated to do. But the real lesson came in the form of presence, of listening, of connection. Clifford showed me there is no such thing as being too old to start over. There is only the moment when we allow ourselves to live again. Today, when I wake up, I no longer feel the weight of loneliness. I feel anticipation. Sometimes, it's for a new song we'll learn. Other times, it's simply for the certainty that he'll come by, bringing a pastry, a smile, or that kind of silence that embraces without needing any words. I've learned to prepare for each day as someone getting ready for a dance, with lightness, with care, with the desire to feel. One afternoon after we finished playing an old waltz, he looked at me with that voice that always feels like a hug and said, "You know you've changed my life, don't you?" And I just sat there, the guitar resting on my lap, searching for a response that could match the weight of that feeling. But there wasn't one, because what we shared didn't fit into ready-made phrases. So I smiled and simply said, "You've changed mine too." And I thought it was already completely written. We weren't in love like in the movies. We were connected, like in real life, with care, with time, with space. It was love, yes, but a love that didn't ask for anything, that didn't need a label, a love that moved to our rhythm, that respected the past, but was written in the present. Today I understand that growing old doesn't mean stopping. It means changing the tempo. And when you find someone willing to dance to that new rhythm with you, everything transforms. I'm still learning guitar, but more than that, I've learned to love myself again, to allow myself to live. At 77, I discovered that life can still surprise you, that there are still notes I haven't played, and that, as long as there's music inside us, time will never be too late. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine as I lived it, then I ask you, truly, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Not just to support me, but so that more people who may have lost the hope to begin again, can find in this story the nudge they need to believe that love, dreams, and life can still begin today, even if you're 77, even if it's just with a guitar and an open heart.